That's not what I wanted to do. There we go. Let me just see, because I do like seeing that it is in fact live on at least YouTube. There it is. Mute tab. Hey, there I am. Yay. Alright, pop that. Alright, so I have started a few minutes early, like I sometimes do. But I do have something I can't talk about, sort of. It's probably not all that interesting, but what the heck, why not? So, something I've had on my mind to do for a little bit, but because finally today the written review for the Riververse Omnibus went live, because I finished editing it yesterday. So I went live today. It's like, good, I can finally spend my free time on other things. One of those other things I wanted to do was to go through my process for taking my physical media collection, including this. I've got this on Blu-ray. Taking it off the discs and putting it on my server. So I'm making fair progress there. Some of the videos are pretty long, though, because they're involved. Like I've been engineering these scripts and over-engineering these scripts for quite a while. A few years now. Takes a while to get through them. So I'm gonna, at some point, put all that up. Put the scripts up on GitHub. Put the videos up on the YouTube channel. I don't know if I'll put it on Rumble as well. I'll think about it. I don't know if I will bother trying to write up a guide that I'll put on Substack. I mean, I'll probably have some kind of README on the GitHub. I don't know. I'll have to think about it. For now, I just want to make the media. But some of the videos are coming out kind of long. So what I might also do at some point is make up some shorter videos, which is basically hey, here's just the stuff to do, not any explanation for what it does. Might try doing that, because that might be helpful. But yeah, it gets involved. Oh, geez, because it is a multi-step process, but it covers a lot, and it gets a lot of stuff taken care of, a lot of stuff done. And yeah, then it's, I like it. It's very nice. I like my process. And when I don't like it, I improve it. So that's been going on for a few years. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else to mention, since there's still a couple minutes left before starting this. I also want to work on, because I have the free time now, at least one essay for the Substack. I'm not sure. I already tried writing some of it, but it wasn't coming together. I still know what the idea is. I've got my notes on it too. So I feel I just need to get either the right mindset or the right inspiration to just start writing it again, because it's one of those ideas that I don't know how many other people experience it. So how frequently they experience it. It's probably kind of common. We have that idea, but it's in like a cloud, and you're just trying to figure out, okay, I need to focus it down. It needs to be crystallized into something. It's still kind of in the cloud, so I just got to figure out that crystallization. Hopefully I will. Because I do think it'll be an interesting thing to write up. If only for my own experience of trying to get it all ordered and written. Did just remember one thing, though, that I can mention. So, because I'm seeing here, I recently ordered some stuff, some more movies, so I'm going to be going through this process again to, build up to put the stuff on the server. But I also remembered, I was tempted to, but decided not to, put something in to the Riververse Omnibus review. I was tempted to put something in there comparing those comics to manga, because I do have some experience with manga, not necessarily too much. I think I've read 2, maybe 3. That's it. But one thing that occurred to me, and it's also, if you read my Omnibus review, I definitely talk about it there, and it's also in the videos, that I prefer novels. That's what I prefer to read. So this whole, at times incoherent, certainly lacking coherence stories, even when it's supposed to be the same characters. It's like, yeah, that really bothers me when I was reading that, and just in various issues where it seems like, oh, well, we're here, then we're here, then we're here, then we're here, then we're here, and we're constantly jumping around, and so you lose consistency, lose coherence. I don't like that. Whereas that's something that should not be happening in a novel, because a novel is a single focused work. It might be an epic, it might span a great deal, but it still is a single thing that is supposed to be consistent, is supposed to be coherent. If it fails at that, well, then it's not a very good novel. But it's still, that's what it's supposed to do. And it occurred to me that, because I will hear people talk about how manga is decimating American comic books. And most times people are just citing them being better than modern American comic books. But it occurred to me that, well, manga is also closer, at least from my experience, to novels, where it is a single focused thing. And they're also completely serialized. So even going through, with the omnibus, there's 25 separate stories in there, counting the like short stories. But there's only one of them that constitutes more than two stories that's actually coherent across them. That's the E11 trilogy, which I do like. I think that was the best in there. But like you look at Yaiba 1 through 3. Well, no, Yaiba 1 is kind of something. Then 2 and 3 kind of go together, but they're also really bad because they're not really consistent with each other, and certainly not consistent with the first one. It's like you don't have that in a novel, and it also, what manga I've read, you don't have it there. Now, I've still, in one of the manga that I have read, it is, it does have some retcons in it, because it's being written like every week, or I think it was every week, and then it was just like, you reach a point that, oh, change needed to be made in order to continue the story. That's fine, I get that, I understand that. There's nothing wrong with that. Because I would describe them as good faith retcons, where it's like, okay, it's to continue telling the story, and it's just a please overlook and keep going, versus a, oh yeah, that's just wrong before. It's like, no, you had to do this to further the story. I get it, I understand. It's one of those things that if the author could go back, would probably do that and then straighten it all out. And you can do that. It's not a just, oh, we're pulling things out of nowhere. But still, it seems more like a novel, where it is a single, focused, coherent, consistent story. And I wonder if that is also a reason for them to be defeating American comic books. I have no idea how the Rippaverse is compared to, like, Marvel or DC. Because in theory, with Marvel and DC, you can have people that they just do one storyline. Or like one cast of characters, and that's it. So it is just a serialized story there. Whereas with Rippaverse, it seems like they jump around sometimes. Like you've got characters changing their action, their personalities, definitely between Alpha Core number 1 and the others. But yeah, and I guess that is also true. Alpha Core number 1 is in there. Alpha Core number 1 follows after ISOM 1 and 2, not 3. 3 would, I think, release later. Great War Separation, parts 1 and 2, have at least one character who's in Alpha Core and in ISOM, but I think those may have been written later, and it's all this jumping around. So it does make me wonder, and I know I'm just blah, 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 blah. I know I'm doing that right now. But it does make me wonder how the Rippaverse would have been. The book is over there. How there would be if it were more focused, where it's like, yeah, we are doing multiple storylines, but it's not a, we're doing this one or two here, and then we're doing this one, then we're doing this. But nope. We just always focusing on this, have the people that are always focused on that, people that are always focused on this, people that are always focused on this. It does make me wonder. And it's also like, for me, yes, I do jump from one story to another, but at least it's always me. Like, it's not changing people, and I always have that plan. So, do I have ideas for more stories in the failure storyline with Sam? Yes, I do. I'm not going to get to them for a while because there's other stories I want to tell first. But I know what those are now. And I'm not really going to deviate from those plans too much. So, because it's me writing. It's not, now somebody else. And it's isolated. I don't have other stories that will interact with that. So it's not like, because I did feel like with Yaira 2 and 3, the whole magic stuff, how that was being put in there, it felt like it was just pulled in because, we can do magic in the Rippaverse. And it's like, start pulling that. It's like, it made no sense. I think it was completely wrong to do to Yaira there, but specifically her having some magic training, it's like, where's this coming from? How does this benefit the story? I don't think it really does. It feels like, it's also in this story, so if we grab that and pull it in, we can do fun stuff. It's like, no, it's like, because my stories are all typically separated, like, there's this universe, there's that universe, hopefully I'm going to be protected from that. But it's possible I will also make those mistakes. I'm not perfect, I know it. That's why I do the criticizing, the assigned reading reviews and such, to get better at finding those flaws so that I can find them in my own work and prevent myself from making those errors, making those mistakes. All right, it's now definitely after 9. I went for a bit. So let's talk about that. So this is the... Didn't realize I wrote that much. 14th episode produced, 11th episode to air, the Terratin incident. I'm just trying to think. I kind of do just want to say right now, I actually liked this. I did. I gave it... At first I put down a weak recommendation, but then as I thought about it a little bit more and looked at what I... Even just last week, the Jihad was that episode. I gave that a 2. And as I thought about it, it's like... The reasons I have to potentially make the Terratin incident a 2, a weak recommendation instead of a straight recommendation, they're far less than what it was for the Jihad. Because that, it was like, I mean, yeah, obviously we know what's going on here. It's not that hard to figure it out. And also, why are we putting things in here that seems we don't need it? This, though, no, this is actually pretty good. There were times when it felt a little fast and loose with the science fiction. That's really the thing that bothers me. But it felt fine. I enjoyed it. It was interesting. I'm sorry, I need to mute myself briefly. I just feel a little bit of a cough, and I definitely need some water. So just a moment. Okay, so the story starts with the Enterprise apparently on a mapping mission, I think it was, and they are traveling to a burnt-out supernova remnant. Well, I'm not sure if it's bad science, or if it is that science hadn't yet figured things out, because this is 73, I think is what the copyright was. Hang on, I can look. Yeah, 73. November 73, so, yeah. Because what it depicts is kind of like mashed potatoes. It's really lumpy, and it's like, that's... A supernova remnant would be like a white dwarf. I'm pretty sure those are basically spherical. Don't think that they would be lumpy. And then it refers to it being a cloud, and it's like, oh, so you're talking about a nebula. Yeah, technically a lot of those are supernova remnants. Excuse me, but we call them nebula. Or nebulae, because they are nebulous. Why are we using a different name here? So I have a feeling that was either they didn't know, or either the people involved did not know what really they were talking about. They want, supernova remnant. That sounds cool. It's like, it's a nebula. People just call it a nebula. Say it's a nebula. It's possible that they didn't have that going on, or maybe at the time people didn't quite understand. Like, even astronomers didn't quite understand what a supernova remnant... I don't know. It's just weird to me, the use of that term. Because to me, a nebula, yes, it can be, or very often is, a supernova remnant. I get that. But I just feel like, don't use the umbrella term that covers many things when what you're specifically referring to is a nebula. I guess maybe I'm just too biased towards using that more specific language. Maybe that's it. But anyway, they're scanning this thing. And then they get a signal, a radio signal. And it's like, that's weird. Because we don't know where it's coming from. What does it say? Seems to be random noise. It's like, alright, well, that's weird. Oh, wait, no. We picked up a word in that. You found a word in that? Yeah, it's using this... I don't remember the name of it, but some sort of code where it's like, really? We've not used that for 200 years, for 2 centuries. Why would somebody... What's the word? Terratin. 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 It's like, well, okay. That's Weird. It's appeared twice in the signal. Okay, now we gotta look. Sir? Well, I mean, it's... The rest of the signal is random. We get a word in there that's like, okay, that's random as well. But the fact it happened twice, not random anymore. That's a pattern. So let's go investigate. Of course, one thing that is kind of funny is, and they don't really explain this, but it's a bit of an issue, isn't it? Terratin isn't a real word. So how do you pull that out and be like, oh yes, that's a word? It's... I guess maybe it's just noise, and then it's like word, like the letters came in and say, okay, so that's got to be a word, and then noise again. Don't know. It does remind me of one thing I do want to mention. I think I actually do have this in one of the Catherineverse stories already. I don't quite remember. But at least part of the Earth, to a degree, went dark within my lifetime, because we moved, at least for television broadcast, from analog to digital a while ago. Because of how digital broadcast works and digital compression, it would always look like noise. It'll look like it's random. There are patterns in there, but if you don't know how to decode it, it's noise. Because if there's a pattern in there that's recognizable, that's something that you could have compressed. Okay? Like ideally when you compress data, it has the least amount of patterns in it now, because the patterns should be stored in such a way that that's how you're getting the compression. So, yeah, by moving to digital, that meant that you don't have the analog signals. The analog signals are just literally sent directly into the television. It's decoded, and it's not even really all that decoded, but you get the image. It's not technically no, you can't also compress, but it still is an analog signal. The patterns are there. You know that's not something natural. Because natural, you'd expect it to be random. It is something unnatural. It is something artificial, created by somebody else. So, yeah. But I think radio is actually still analog. AM and FM. I'm pretty sure those are still analog. So technically, we have not gone that dark. At least not completely dark. But at least as far as television broadcasts, so for a specific part of the spectrum, at least for parts of the world that have gone digital, I could believe there's some that are still analog out there. But in any case, that portion of it, Earth would suddenly be like, yeah, it's a radio source, but nothing here important. So anyway, they go. And as they're approaching the planet, I don't remember if they mentioned the signal anymore, but the planet that the signal was coming from. They notice, this is a weird planet. It's still got a molten core, but the mantle and crust have crystallized. In other words, they've cooled. But the core is still molten, so the planet's still alive somewhat. And it is also undergoing surface eruptions. Not entirely sure how you'd manage that with the mantle being crystallized, because that should mean that there's no flows there that can then erupt from the surface. But, okay, let's go with it. It is certainly a turbulent planet, not really safe to be on. And as they approach, I'm trying to remember, there was something about... That's right, a signal did sweep through them. Some sort of impulse did sweep through the ship. It's like, well, that was weird. So, everyone okay from that? Anyone get hurt? No, we're all good. Hey, sickbay, your sensitive animals, how are those doing? Because apparently they keep animals in the sickbay that if some canaries in a coal mine kind of thing, where if the environment changes suddenly, they react. Interesting concept for that. And it is one of those things, it actually makes a lot of sense, because the reality is there are some species on Earth that are far better than anything artificial we've made. I mean, it's like, you want to, synthesizing meat, synthetic meat. Why would you do that when it takes a great deal of energy, a great deal of minerals, all the stuff you have to collect together to do that, versus there's a cow, there's grass, rain. We're kind of good at that point. It's like it's already figured that out. It's a much more efficient processing of the water and the grass into meat than anything you're going to pull off in a lab. They also try to have a carbon sequestration system that's like tens of millions of dollars. It's self-contained in that it's like you don't need to provide extra power, but it's like a tree. The larch. The larch. I have no idea how many people will get that reference, but I don't think anyone watches these anyway, so I don't know how much that really matters. Anyhow, moving on. There's also one thing I saw, I don't remember where it was, that one of the bays in America, or rather one of the harbors, like New York or Boston, I don't remember which, it used to actually be really clean. But it no longer is. And you might think, oh, well, it's just being exposed to more stuff, and more garbage is being dumped in. And it's like, well, actually, no, that's not quite it. There had been... Was it a clam? I can't quite remember. But there was a species of clam that lived in there that would actually clean. They were filters. They were natural filters to the water. And the thing is, the shipping coming in was bringing in other species that started to outcompete with it, so the numbers are so low, they can't naturally clean the water. But it's also one of those things, it's a major harbor. You can't just, prevent the invasive species, and you can't necessarily, cut it off so you can go in and get rid of all of them. So you don't have this natural means to clean it there anymore, at least not at the levels you need it. So the idea of, on a starship, or any spaceship, having animals that are sensitive or even able to respond to a situation and correct it, it's actually really reasonable. More so the issue I would have, and this is me just going through it now, so not something that we held against the episode, they shouldn't be kept in sick bay. Okay, we have a zoo, a menagerie, an arboretum for plants, but, somewhere that's where these animals just get to live and are there naturally. Not we have them they have a fish in a tank and mice in a cage. It's like, or we let them just live. I mean, I get it, then not necessarily having Bones and Chapel there watching them all the time, so it's like, hey, what's the situation? I understand that, but it still is they're literally going to be on this mission with you for weeks or months. That doesn't seem very nice to have them cooped up like that. Why not have something more formal for them that is a recreation of their environment that they get to live in? It just seems so much more appropriate to do that. So, yeah. If I don't know if I do have an idea for a story in the Catherineverse that would have at least them bringing a cow with them, because milk, not so much the meat, but milk. And things like that to keep things natural on the ship. Taking advantage of natural processes to recycle and such. And it's sorry. It makes sense, but that's more on a small scale. But it does make me think it might be worth exploring that in another story that would be more on a large scale. The ship in the story that would have the cow, it's a single family there. They don't need much. They could also have some chickens, maybe some goats, but it's like it's not that big. Doesn't need to be a big ship. Doesn't need to have many resources. And also, I just remembered another thing. There have been pastures and such where some people try to remove the animals from there, like the goats, the sheep, the cow, and such. As though this would help heal the land. Well, the land ended up overgrowing, is actually very unhealthy. And turns out that, if you just put the animals back that are supposed to be there, they're part of the cycle. Right? The cow is supposed to be there eating the grass, and then leaving its crap all around. That is supposed to be there, that returns the nutrients, and that's supposed to happen. It is a symbiotic relationship. It's not just a cow consuming. It is a symbiotic relationship with the soil and such, so it should be there. Same thing with sheep, same thing with goats. Also kind of reminds me of a line from the John Wayne movie McClintock, very good movie. Set in Texas, and I don't remember everything that really set up. Oh yeah, there are, I think it's in part because they're farmers coming in. They don't really go full into range war stuff, but he does. That's right. He explains, if you can make a go of your farms here, that's awesome, because at this altitude, no, this is not farmland. And the way John Wayne puts it, McClintock puts it, is God made this land for the buffalo. It serves for cattle as well. And that is kind of how it works. That where the environments animals are originally found in, invasive species, throw a lot of that off, including accidental ones. But they do exist in a symbiotic way with the land there. So people trying to remove them from the land, it's kind of stupid. Because no, they're supposed to be there, and the things that you're concerned with, they think, oh no, we can't let that happen. It's like, put the animals there, they'll help it. I mean, it's kind of like how we used to. I know I'm really far afield from this, but I'll wrap up this tangent with this. For a while, we had, I think it was specifically for Yellowstone, very aggressive policies to stop forest fires. So going through and getting rid of all the brush and doing everything we can to prevent a forest fire. We also had noticed that, there's some trees here that they're going to go extinct because they cannot reproduce. Just no matter what happens, they cannot reproduce. They got I think it was something at a pine cone. But you look at it and it's like, all right, well, we see the seeds in there, but they're stuck in this resin that is so hard. There's like no way to get them out. So it's like we can't. How does this tree even survive to begin with? How do we have these? No idea. Just no idea how this thing has been surviving as long as it has as a species. And it's like there's nothing we can do. There's no solution that we know here. Then a large forest fire did happen that we weren't able to stop. And when we finally got it under control, people went and looked. It was like, oh, some bitch. Turns out that resin, it melts in heat. The trees, their reproductive cycle, their reproductive system was in fact designed to be symbiotic with forest fires. That is, the fire burns, it melts the resin, the seeds fall into the ground, which now has all the ash. That ash is actually kind of good fertilizer. Or at least it can be. It does depend, but it's like, the burned material, it's actually beneficial to the soil, but also, and now it starts sprouting. So it's like, oh, we need to start actually allowing forest fires. Controlled ones, but we should start doing that. It's the whole proper land and life management, not just animal management, but even flora management. You do need to do that. Unfortunately, we don't do it as well as we really should be in various places, but still is that there are definitely things that we can do. Okay, so those animals, they're fine, whatever. And because of that, Kirk's like, all right, let's keep heading to the planet. I mean, we got to investigate this, and it seems like nothing's wrong, so we'll just keep going. And then suddenly, the beam hits them far more strongly. Now, this causes everyone to get frozen and just be glowing white. But then it does eventually stop because there's eruptions on the surface of the planet that interferes with the system that's firing the ray. Okay, that's fine. What isn't so fine is later on there's the mention that apparently the wave is continuing to hit them. It's like it stopped. I don't know. So that inconsistency does annoy me, but anyway. So they the wave has stopped, so they're able to start moving and all that, and they immediately have some problems because the ship has been somewhat damaged. Specifically, the dilithium crystals technically would not be dilithium anymore. Well, no, they would be dilithium, but they're no longer crystals as they knew them. And all the connections to them have also failed. So Kirk and Spock go to investigate this, and when they do, Spock looks at the molecular structure and finds that they are now different. That's actually, the molecules are arranged in a spiral. Okay, that's not right. And that's why, it's technically still dilithium, because that's what the compound is, but the crystalline structure is different, so it would be... I'm trying to think of what it would be kind of like how carbon is graphite, diamond, graphene, graphane. Are there any other? And those are called allotropes. So that's specifically referring to one element. Dilithium isn't, I think. I don't think it's an element. I think an element. I'm pretty sure it's a compound, so it's now just got a different structure. Which still should... that would significantly change its properties. You'd expect some other things to potentially change, but like you called by a different name, but whatever. While they are looking at this, they, Kirk is then like, Spock, are you slouching? No, I've never slouched. I was going to ask you the same thing, though. Because it turns out they're shrinking. And after a bit, it is determined that all organic material on the ship is shrinking. Which is why the ship is not shrinking, but they are, as are their uniforms. Because it turns out they are, in fact, using an organic material for their uniforms. I'm just trying to think. I mean, they do also... It is weird, because you start getting more technical with some of this, and it's also occurring to me. Well, I guess since it's organic, maybe it would be fine. That eventually there would be a limit to their shrinking, because the DNA in the cells of their body, it can only be compressed so far, it can only shrink so far, and then it'll just resist and be like, nope. So that would provide enough pressure that they can't keep shrinking. And I guess if you're just assuming that there's also DNA in the materials of the clothing, that then there would be a limit to that. So I'm just continuing to think about it, because it is I'm getting very technical here, which is probably not a good thing, but they do mention that it is the distance between molecules is shrinking. So it's literally the I kind of lost the word, but it is the compounds themselves are becoming more dense. Which, yes, technically that would do this. And he's even mentioned that means that they're not losing any mass. So their density is increasing because they are growing smaller. Unfortunately, though that is stated, so it's like, good, we're not worrying about mass shifting. Cool. It never addresses the whole, that means that as they're getting smaller and smaller, like potentially that small, that if they're 150 pounds, that's 150 pounds right there. That's a problem. That's a lot of pressure into a very small point. Now, one thing I will also mention, they would technically still be losing strength as they shrink, because even though you might say their muscle density is increasing, but no, their muscle mass is not changing, so in that way their strength shouldn't be reducing. But this is a lever. It gets smaller, that means that the leverage gets smaller, so they wouldn't technically be getting weaker, but it still is. Like, if they can reach a button, all they have to do is, like, lean on it and it'll be depressed. So they should be fine in that regard. It might also be starting to ruin the bulkheads a little bit, depending on how much pressure they can take. But, yeah, because, I mean, if they're getting down to this small, their feet are going to be like that small, right? And every step that you've got 1 foot down, that's all your weight in one spot. So, I mean, the PSI on that would actually be kind of high. Its metal would probably be fine, but it still is. That's a bit much. And they are indeed getting down to about that small. And it was also, Spock did the calculations asked the computer to do the calculations, that if they get below 1 centimeter in height, they will be unable to control the ship anymore. That will be so small, just not doable. They wouldn't be able to get around to manipulate things on the ship. They're also losing power because of the damage to the dilithium crystals, which provokes Sulu to be like, I'll aim the phasers down there so we can just fire and do something. He's just getting frustrated, and Kirk is like, what are you talking about? Last sensors were telling us that there's, like, it covers a sixth of the planet. Like, the source of it is a sixth of the planet. Even if we fire the phasers, we have so little power, it's just going to drain more power and probably not do anything anyway. Later on, though, he does ask Spock, hey, where's the center of this stuff coming from? Oh, it's right here. Kirk asked this because he wanted to be beamed down. And it is kind of funny how they depict that happening. But they beam him down. And, well, hey, let me look back at my notes. I just want to make sure if I'm skipping anything. Yeah, they did try to get away from the planet first. That didn't help. Well, they couldn't. They didn't have enough power. Oh, yeah, that's right. The organic versus inorganic. And also the DNA thing. That's another thing I can talk about. We define... Organic is an artificial term in chemistry. In that its organic material is just comprised of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. Like the building blocks of life make it organic. But technically, carbon versus iron, yeah, they have different properties, but it's really that big a deal? Or carbon and silicon. These are much closer together than carbon and iron. Silicon would be considered inorganic because it's not carbon. But it's not inorganic by any other definition. But by any objective definition. Non-arbitrary, potentially, is a better way to put it. So technically, then, we have the problem that it doesn't make sense that a beam can affect the human definition of organic material and not affect the human definition of inorganic material. That makes no sense. And also, DNA is not in everything in our body. So, well, not in every... Our DNA is not in every cell of our body, because we also have a lot of bacteria that have their own DNA. The mitochondria in our cells have their own DNA that's separate from the main cell's DNA, which is found... what is found in the nucleus. So the nucleonic... No, because that's like quantum physics. The nuclear... Yes, that would be right. The nuclear DNA would be different from the mitochondrial DNA. I think nuclear is right there. Which means potentially that it is... The size of the DNA is different. Which would mean then that the ability for it to shrink down would be different. So if it were larger, that actually might mean that the mitochondria cannot shrink as much as a regular cell. There's other issues as well that... I'm getting really too technical here, but it is a... You can't just do a shrink ray, is kind of my point. There's a lot of consequences that would fall from that. That would come from that. Anyway. Especially if it is some things are impacted and some things not. No. Alright, so... Kirk beams down... Oh yeah, I had mentioned at a centimeter they won't be able to manipulate the ship anymore, but they will shrink down to 1/16 of an inch, so that is a fair bit smaller here. So that distance is a centimeter, and that, so much smaller, is yeah, 1/16 is about 2 millimeters, it seems, so a fifth the size of a centimeter. Not good. Not good for them. But Kirk... Well, before Kirk beams down, it is even brought up that, hey, you know, the transporters... They keep a record of where we are. You know, when you know, in the buffer, when we beam somewhere. That may have an impact here. That's all we get. Kirk beams down. Hey, he's fine. He's back to full size. Curiously... he went from having, because I didn't catch this, maybe I was making a note, but he had a communicator with him that once he was smaller was like that in his hand instead of that. Fortunately, that bounced well to not break anything. So yeah, that I have no idea why. I mean, I get it is synthetic, so it shouldn't be affected by the beam. But they had a miniature one. Maybe I missed that and just didn't hear it. I don't know. But he beamed down. He's now correct size. But while he's down there, and he did also say, hey, have the auto recall for 10 minutes. Because you guys might shrink too far to be able to do it, so we'll just have the ship beam me back up in 10 minutes. Beams down. He's full size. Cool. And he's looking around trying to investigate, and there's eruptions going on all over the place, which is not good for him, in part because at one point he falls over because of the shaking from the eruptions and drops his communicator, kind of like I did. But in his case, lava then falls on it, destroying it, or at least making it inaccessible. So, well, I can't tell them to beam me back up now, can I? I've just waited out the 10 minutes. Which involves a fair amount of running because he needs to get away from the lava. And as he does, he eventually finds a city, a miniature city there. That's like, oh, there are people here. And part of the reason why I wanted to beam down was basically, look, something is alive here. This signal has got to be coming from some kind of intelligent life. Living or dead, either way, I gotta go down and investigate. The fact he's full size is just a bonus. Gets down there, sees this city, and before he can really do anything with that, he's beamed back up. He's full size, so it's like, cool, I can take care of the ship. Scotty, where are you? Scotty? Why is no one in the transport room? Fine, goes up to the bridge. Is anybody here? Anybody here? Would you stop the yelling? There are certain tropes or cliches with the incredible shrinking people that do annoy me. Like the whole, it has them where they just start talking higher and higher pitch. I don't really like that one. I mean, think about it. A dog is smaller than me. And while some of them do yap, some of them still got decent barks, low barks. So it's like, I mean, come on. I think we can have some flexibility. I don't think we need to just have them constantly be higher and higher frequency. Plus, it is also, even I can, move my voice around. So it's like, come on. And that's clearly, it's not changing the size of my throat doing it. But, so they don't do that. But, yes, no, Kirk's voice, full-size voice, would be more powerful because he himself is larger and is driving more air in and out of his lungs. So, yeah, it would actually be very loud to someone who's small and could potentially be painful. I was like, okay, Scotty, great to know you're there. Where's the bridge crew? They disappeared. They seem to have been beamed away. All right. All of you, go over there. I don't want to step on you. And then he starts running around taking care of some stuff. That ends up involving targeting his phasers at the city. Well, actually, near the city. He vaporizes some nearby crystals. Dilithium, by the way. So, hey, they got what they need to repair the ship. But then he not beams. He hails them and is just like, hey, you did this to us. You've taken my people. I'm going to destroy you if you don't, if you don't respond, if you don't return my people. I'm going to just blow you up. And so now they hail back, and it's just, this is, part of it is even explaining that, yeah, we lost the ability to communicate with people because just the systems were damaged. But now they can hail. But it's like he hails down there, and the guy who's basically the mayor is like, I forbid you from destroying me. You forbid me? I was like, Kirk is even like, what are you talking about? You forbid me. That's not how this is working, my friend. I get to do whatever I want. And the guy's like, you and I, we are equals among some people. It's like, I still have the gun. I do kind of appreciate Kirk just being so incredulous at this. It's like, what are you talking about? We are a proud people. I still have the gun. What are you doing? I understand you're proud. You're also really antagonizing Kirk. What are you doing? But the guy eventually explains the whole, yeah, we're in an emergency situation. Our long-range communication, though, has been destroyed because, in case you haven't noticed, the planet's kind of exploding. But what we do have is, and they were able to send out the message with the Terratin there, which does get explained, by the way. It's not actually Terratin, and I actually like this. I think this was fair, as in like a good idea, workable idea. So anyway, they have a planetary defense system, which is to take this signal, this wave that shrinks them, because this happened to them a while ago when they arrived on the planet. Apparently it just will focus it and shoot it off into space. So if anyone were to attack the planet, it's like, okay, well, we'll just shrink you. So you're now less of a threat. It's like, yeah, that checks out. I'm good with that. I'm sort of like if Russia had a way to concentrate the winter. Because, I mean, it is one of those things that, what has protected Russia previously? The winter. It's like it stopped Napoleon and it stopped Hitler. If they could, bottle it up and focus it, I'm sure they would, because it would have been quite effective. Anyway, so they're explaining then. They'll also, like, yeah, we beamed down your people. I don't remember any reason being given for why, other than just communication. But still say, you're now talking to us. How come you couldn't talk to us before? They're there. They're unharmed. And Kirk, I don't like that he maintains a certain level of anger with the Terratins, as far as, like, he doesn't seem at all interested in helping them. However, I do grant this. Initially, all of his orders are concerned with his own people. It's like, I'm beaming them up. And the guy is also like, we're sorry for what happened. We got dilithium here, which you need. You can take whatever you want. That's fine. So they actually gather together the largest of the dilithium crystals they have on the planet, which I guess, even though it's on the planet producing that's actually quite a plot hole. It's on the planet that produces the wave naturally, but they have not had their crystal structures changed like the dilithium on the ship. Anyway, beams them up, and Kirk then does start, I think, beaming people down to beam them back up, because that is going to fix them, but it's also collecting more of the dilithium. And I completely agree, his actions are correct, that he needs to take care of his ship and his crew first, not those assholes who did this to them. Okay? I get bad situation, but still my priority is the ship. I'm taking care of them first. Once the crew is restored, then it's what are we going to do with them? Are we going to just leave them here or anything like that? And Kirk gives an order that is initially a little confusing, but it makes sense. He tells Sulu, aim for the city with pinpoint precision. Pinpoint accuracy, like, very fine, powerful phaser blast. And the reason why is he's using the phaser to cut the city out from the ground so they can beam it up, and it just sits on the transporter pad, then they can take it somewhere else. So now, we already got the explanation. That's how it ends. It said, hey, we're going to do this and we'll take you somewhere. So, certain level of forgiveness, but there is also some more explanation that I'm about to give you, that we did get a little earlier. Who are the Terratins? What does the word Terratin come from? They were human colonists that had gone to a world they named Terratin. Eventually it evolved into Terratin. And they were a lost colony because they came to this planet, I'm okay with that. Came to this planet, they shrunk down. When people came to check on them, it's like, there's nobody here. They're gone. I guess it's a lost colony. It failed, everybody died. And it's like, well, no, they're too small. They couldn't communicate. Although that is true. Technically, there should have been ruins. But, well, no, I take that. Well, I was going to say, technically, there should be ruins from when they were larger, except it's possible that they shrunk at the same rate, which in an hour or so, they were too small. But then, there should still have been, like, whatever the original equipment was that was full size. Now they're tiny. How much could they actually do? So that would still exist as a ruin. Anyway, so it is. These are long lost humans. So it does make sense that Kirk is going to try to help them, even though they did abuse the ship in order to get this help. So it's like, abandoning you is not completely inappropriate. It would still be wrong, but it's like, it kind of makes some sense. But no, he's going to take them with him. And it is I do like that Terratin became Terratin, because it makes sense that over time you wouldn't want to have your planet named Terratin, because it's not personal, because it's just a designation, it's not a name. So eventually you just shorten it down in a kind of a vernacular way to Terratin. That actually makes sense. I'm good with that. So I'm gonna go somewhere else. Put them on a new planet. Um. Oh, yeah, that's right. There was one thing that they mentioned that this I don't really like. So in which one was it? What was the name of it? That's right, the ambergris element, which was 2 weeks ago. Although it would be aired 2 weeks after this, because that was episode 13, not and this was episode 11. In that one, you had the hey, we did these genetic modifications to us that then eventually became permanent genetic code instead of just inserting it into our bodies. That makes sense. But this, it's mentioned that over time, the signal became itself genetic for us. So that it's like, no, we just always are this small. It's like, no. No. No, that makes no sense. That would be like saying, oh yeah, we have been living next to fire for so long that now we just have fire inside of us. It's like, what? Fire does not become genetic. What? There's also the issue that, and yeah, actually that is true. Technically, this shrinking should have been undone eventually. Painfully, possibly. But it would have happened over time because your body wouldn't necessarily be able to create the dense molecules that they'd have to eat and breathe, allowing their bodies to regenerate new cells. Those new cells are not necessarily going to be compact anymore, compact like the originals, if they are not being exposed to the wave. So yeah, I guess it is true. They were being continuously exposed to it, so that would have an impact there. So it wouldn't allow you to just go back to full size. But it's still technically, if you put somebody in that environment and then remove them from the environment and they continued to live normally and healthily, they might actually go back to full size on their own. It would take a while. It would be painful, potentially, as well, because you'd have large cells and small cells try and be connected. I'm actually not sure. I guess it's more so just it would likely have to be a temporary phenomenon, is more so what I'm thinking. But it still is. There's no way you're integrating that into your genetic code. That doesn't make any sense. As I said, it would be like we've lived next to fire so long that now fire is in us. It's like that. No, that's not how that works. Or to use another. Well, it's like the radio waves and such being produced by phones and such. As though that would just to well, now we have organs that are going to start responding to that. It's like, no, that makes no sense. So yeah, it's some of the science fiction is definitely a no, that's not how that works. See, now I'm just really thinking about the whole your body is not necessarily, I don't know if your body would be prevented from, with the cellular reproduction, if it would be prevented from making the original size, the non-compact versions of the cells. I don't know. I, it, it, hmm. I guess you'd have to be continuously exposed to it to ensure, but it's also, oh, yeah, actually, it would kill you. This would kill you, at least leave you very lethargic. Because if the mass is the same, your volume is smaller, but the mass is the same, I'd expect then you would have the same number of total red blood cells in your body, right? Which means that because your lungs are smaller and all of your respiratory system is smaller, you have less an ability to breathe in the oxygen to oxygenate all the red blood cells in your body. So you would be going around with nope, can't think of there's a term. There's a medical term for not having enough oxygen in your blood. It's not anemia. That's not enough red blood cells. It's something else. Hypoxia, is that it? Anyway, that actually, you'd be stuck with that. because you wouldn't possibly be able to breathe in enough. I mean, it's kind of in a Deep Space Nine episode, One Little Ship, when they shrink down a runabout. There's then the mention about how, hey, it's harder for us to breathe in the air molecules. That's different, though. Well, what they describe there is hey, it's going to be harder for us to breathe it in because they're going to be relatively larger. But it would make... And I am thinking about it. Would it actually make sense it would be harder to breathe it in? I'm not certain. But it would be... Your body might not be able... In that episode, in One Little Ship, your body's expecting air molecules of a certain size, oxygen molecules of a certain size. If you're breathing in the oxygen molecules that are now relatively, relative to your body, much larger than what your body is expecting, you actually would not be able to breathe there. Which they solve it by just beaming in pockets of air, so they're fine. But it is, that is a real concern. You wouldn't be able to oxygenate your blood fully. Huh. You also wouldn't be able to eat fully either, because if you were to eat a steak, for example, that hasn't been shrunk, hasn't been compacted, you're getting fewer molecules of the meat, so there's less of the chemical energy in what you're eating that your body can then break down and use to fuel itself. Because there's less... The energy there is stored in the molecular bonds. You're eating a smaller size because that's all you can hold. So there's fewer molecules, less energy. Yeah. Shrinking like that is just a good way to either lead to lethargy or straight up kill you. Huh. I'm not holding against this episode, nor would I hold it against One Little Ship. But it's actually really interesting to stop and consider some of the consequences of what they're talking about here. Anyway, I'm sorry, I can't hold that against the episode, because I know that this is just me getting really technical. And it's one of those things, if I were trying to write a story where this happened in there, like with the failure stories, if I decided, I'm going to have somebody who has the ability to change their size, I would have to have it be, yeah, you can shrink yourself, but then you got to go up to being pretty big again. It'd also be funny. You go back up to regular size. If you made yourself larger, that would actually be funny if it were you're just changing your mass isn't changing, the distance between molecules is. Because then that would mean you can hold a much larger volume of air. So either you need to be careful to not... Because if you did that, that might actually be equivalent to hyperventilating, where you're getting way too much air in there. Or you could just do that and then hold your breath for a tremendously long amount of time because you have so much more air in your lungs than you would normally. That could be interesting, but I would have to make sure it stays temporary. Because if it were to ever... You couldn't live small for long, you couldn't live small for long because... As I point out, you wouldn't be able to get enough oxygen and you wouldn't be able to eat enough or get enough water. If you made yourself very large, you have the problem that you would at least I already mentioned the respiratory system, but as far as your stomach is concerned, you would need to eat a tremendous amount in order to fill the stomach physically and feel that. And so feel full. But that would be potentially an order of magnitude or more than what your body is expecting for the caloric intake. I don't want to use that power, I really don't, but it is interesting now to think that through. Alright, let's actually get me to stop talking. I know that's not always easy. Eye of the Beholder is next. 15th produced and 15th to air. How do you like that? And then we have Once Upon a Planet, which will be the last of the of season 1 episodes. So yeah, but Eye of the Beholder is next. Also, just quickly, yeah, there's nothing all that interesting in the trivia. I'm just curious, what is the Eye of the Beholder. What's the description we got here on IMDb? While investigating the disappearance of Federation members, Kirk and his landing party find themselves placed in an alien zoo. Okay. Combined with the title Eye of the Beholder, I mean, we'll find out next week, but that could be suggesting that we're not animals, we're people. Well, you say that, but do I believe it? Here's actually kind of an interesting question. And I know I said I would stop talking, but I really want to get this one out. I was talking about cows earlier. If a cow were to start talking, would we recognize that as a person? See, it would be difficult to say because it might also just be imitation, like a parrot, which is not a person. But yeah, at what point do you consider something sufficiently alive, sufficiently sentient, that you cannot claim sufficient dominance or stewardship over it to do things, such as a cow? I got no issue with eating beef because, like, well, no, the cow is bred for the purpose of feeding me and others, but that's why it exists. Its death and slaughter to produce those meats is the fulfillment of its purpose. That's not a bad thing. But we are the superintelligent life on the planet. We are the dominant species. We have a stewardship over this. Like, we should still take good care of cattle. We don't need to be crazy about it, okay? Some people would go really overboard, but there is definitely some stuff where, no, we can raise them better than that. We can treat them better than that. Let's do that. It's like, the middle ground. But it is at what point would we recognize that, no, we're not dominant over it. We might still be stewards of it. We might still be taking care of it in a way, but it is its own. It should have control over its own life. I mean, I guess kind of like how a child might be as dependent on its parents. A human child might be as dependent on its parents as a cow might be on a farmer. And no, not a great analogy, but it's like, well, obviously, one, though, you can't just slaughter the child. That's wrong. That's murder. But you can't do that to the cow. So it is where is that point? It is an interesting thing to consider, and at some point, the human species may have to answer that because we'll encounter species. Either we find one on Earth, I kind of doubt it, that would be super intelligent, or we go out into the cosmos, or an alien species from the cosmos visits us, and it's like, oh, like if we're going out, then we may find the one and be like, okay, we need to come up with this judgment ourselves for how we treat them. And if they visit us, and we be like, hey, no, we cannot just be your cattle. Can we, figure this one out? So yeah, it is a worthy question. So I am looking forward to next week. It should be interesting. It might also be obnoxious. It's hard to say because some people, I shouldn't put it as some people. It is a difficult topic to really speak on because there can be a great deal of nuance to it. I'm just trying to think what would be. Okay. TNG, we got the Beta Zeds, right? The Betazoid people who normally they don't communicate verbally. They communicate telepathically. Now, they look humanoid, but let's say that they didn't. That they did not look human. And we just see a bunch of beings that they don't talk. There's no communication as we know it. Now, maybe they can do hand gestures, but it's like, well, so can a monkey. Right? So can an ape. They're not doing that. I could believe that you would fail then to recognize, at least initially, that they are a super intelligent life form, that they are an equal life form in that degree, in that way. Now, of course, they are able to put their thoughts into, at least I'm pretty sure wait. No, I guess not. You never do see, like, Loxana pushing her thoughts into somebody else to communicate with them, aside from Deanna, aside from other Betazoids. So I guess it then does become a question of they even written language. So yeah, I guess that would take care of it. But it still is an interesting idea. If you encounter a species that has a completely different mode of communication than yours, and communication is necessary in order to get across intelligence, in order to even have intelligence, I would also say, how would you figure it out? Who is and isn't? Or what is and isn't? It is an interesting concept, but difficult to present because it's too much nuance, and it is a nuanced topic. It can't just be oh well, all life is like that. It's like, well, no, because you wouldn't call an ant super intelligent. It's like it is clearly just an animal. It obeys its nature. That's it. Nothing else. So you can't just be all life. So there has to be a line there, but where the line is, that's tricky. That is tricky. All right, that will be next time, and well, I assume that's what the story is going to be for the Eye of the Beholder. Let me look at this longer storyline that they give on IMDb. Kirk takes the Enterprise to Loctra 7 to investigate the disappearance of a Federation science team. While on Loctra, large slug-like aliens add them to their zoo, uniting them with members of the missing science team. Communication proves difficult, even for Mr. Spock, as the telepathic alien minds process information faster than humanly possible. An escape attempt goes south, rivaling two parents over the sudden disappearance of their child. Okay. So they're telepathic, so communication is difficult, and they process information faster. That also makes sense for it making things difficult, because in theory, that's oh, well, clearly they're not intelligent life, because they don't think as fast as us. It's like they're so stupid that they can't possibly be intelligent life. It does have potential. This could be interesting. This could be interesting, but has to wait a week.